hey, let's become a pariah now. Let's become even more unpopular. Now, I get it. You people don't want to actually do the work. Instead, you want to watch video all day of people who preach your doctrine, the doctrine that you believe in, and they hand feed you stuff like apple pie and ice cream, and it tastes good and you like it, and it gives you good in the feels, and you don't want to dig anything. You don't even want to read the Bible for yourself. You just want your pet verses and just rap onto your little pet verses and everything will be fine. That's what you think. But unfortunately, stuff isn't going to be fine, and you need to be aware of the stuff coming down. I know this is like me throwing boiled cabbage on your apple pie, and I'm sorry, but sometimes you need that cabbage so you grow as a Christian. So let's go over this stuff again. I talked about before about the Albert Pike letter to Manzini. Albert Pike, once again, he was a Confederate general, high-ranking Freemason. He was not a prophet, people. He was actually a scriptwriter. And he writes to this fella in Italy, and he tells about how there needs to be 3 world wars in order to bring about absolute desolation and have only Luciferians, people that worship Lucifer, on this planet. They don't want anybody else here. Everybody else needs to go. That way God don't have any claim to this world. That's the whole point. To make sure God don't have a claim. If the people don't belong to God, then God don't have a claim to the world, they think, in their little minds. And therefore God will turn his back on the world and Lucifer can have it. Lucifer can stay here with his little minions instead of burning in a lake of fire as prophesied in Revelation 20. So that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the 3 world wars. And Christianity is a key point in this. The First World War, you had your, Pilgrim Society that overthrew the czars. That, your communists, that you Stalin and all that, that's part of your Pilgrim Society. J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris is part of the Pilgrim Society. So they're going to overthrow Russia, kill tens of millions of Christians, weaken Christianity, absolutely wipe out Christianity within Russia, and then during this Bolshevik Revolution, they're going to the Rothschilds signed over a Balfour Decree, had to ask for England to allow Palestine to go to Israel. And they agreed to it. Now, the entire point of the Second World War is to get that going. Right here, they're saying the fascists and the political Zionists, which is what we have in America today. You see everybody's pointing out, oh, the little hat people are doing this and the little hat people are doing that. And you got trans issues and you got pornography and you got all this stuff. It was the same thing that was happening prior to Nazi Germany. The exact same thing's happening, where the little hat people controlled all the banks and all of commerce and all of production and had all this smut going around and promoted sex with children. It's the same thing. It's the exact same script. I mean, you can look at it, you can go back and read it, and you go, wow, this is stupid. Why didn't they at least change the script or at least do something different? It's like redoing a Marvel movie. It's like, why bother to go see it? You know what I mean? I don't watch Marvel movies, but, they're so lame. That's, using that as a reference. Getting back on topic. So you got these fascists and political Zionists, and they're going to come about, destroy Nazism, and then make everybody feel so sad for the political Zionists, for the little hat people of the time, and that way all the world would be like, well, these little hat people are hated everywhere, and the little hat people need to have Palestine. Let's give them Palestine. And they did. They were absolutely horrible to the people in Palestine. They did terroristic acts, but they managed to get the United Kingdom to come along and say, okay, you can have it. And Israel was founded in 1948. That's the timeline on that. And also with this, they allowed, with the Second World War, they wanted communism to be powerful enough to make sure Christianity is no longer what it used to be. The world used to be very Christian. Like nation versus nation and New World, and Christianity spread. No other religion, Christianity. Christianity was strong. But they wanted communism to make sure that was quashed. No more strong Christians. But they did want that shell of Christianity in order to bring about the last death blow. The death blow to Christians and to atheists. Because the entire point of this is to have no more Christians and no more atheists on this world. Only ones here are going to be devout Luciferians, worshiping Lucifer. That way, God does not have a claim to this realm. This is what they think in their little minds. That God would turn his back on it. But you can't have no Christians and you can't have no atheists. If you have an atheist here, God, you have to have a chance of salvation. But no, it has to be devout Luciferians. Change the world. That way, God will turn his back on it. That's the point. That's what they think. So with the Third World War, the Illuminati, which is the illuminated ones, the one who received the light from Lucifer, there's going to be a war. The illuminated ones are going to get the political Zionists and the Islamic world all ruffled up, get their hair brushed back against the grain, and then they're going to attack each other. This is how the world war is going to start. You see, the United States already aligned with Israel. I mean, we can't get any further up Israel's hind end if we tried. We got 250 of our federal politicians in Israel right now putting on little beanies and humping the wall. So we know what side we're fighting with. But you have China coming out saying they are aligned with Palestine. That's why you got these BRIC nations. So when one of them get attacked or get hurt, everybody's going to be, powder keg, boom, World War III. So that's how it's going to happen. Yeah, I'm not a prophetess or a daughter of a prophetess. I just read this script. I read this. I read these. This, Herschel, you read it, and you know what's going to happen. And you see it happening. So anyway, they're going to get these people exhausted and get these people who are agenteers or people who are aggravators or agitators going to come in and be revolutionaries, and you have to kill all these people in order to live, and it's just going to be just complete cataclysm. Why do you think the United States was allowed to have so many guns per person? So when this happens, so you have all this stuff, people, and then here comes the thing. If you read down here, the multitude will be disillusioned with Christianity, and they won't have any compass or direction, and they won't know where to go, and then they'll come in and worship Lucifer. Now, how are they going to get people to turn on God? Well, they're going to make it to where people think that God turned their back on them. Now, how are they going to get Christians to think that? How are they going to think, well, God didn't take me or choose me or like me? So how did this happen? So if God turned his back on me, I'm going to turn my back on God. Now, this is where I become a pariah. This is where I feed you some boiled cabbage, and you're not going to like it. But anyway, that backstory out of the way. Once again, let's review this. The Kabbalah thing, it's in the Freemasonry stuff, and the whole thing is Jewish magic, Jewish sex magic, or Jewish magic, and there's sex magic involved with it, as above, so below, and all this. So they think that if they do these rituals, they can do all this stuff, and this is going to happen. This is how they bring about the end times. This is how they brought about 2 world wars and get ready for a third. So if they're doing this Kabbalah magic stuff, how are they going to get people to think that God's going to turn their back on them? Well, that's through Christianity. People are having a hard time thinking that Christians can be provocateurs or agents of Lucifer, but they can. Freemasonry is not a Christian religion. It's the religion of Lucifer. I don't know how many times I have to say that until my jaw breaks off the hinge, I reckon. But you all need to listen. Freemasonry is a Luciferian cabal religion. In fact, if you look at Theodore Herschel's writings, he states, quote, Masonic lodges are established all over the world to help us achieve our independence. Now, what independence is he talking about? He's talking about independence away from God the Creator. They want to be independent of God the Creator, God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They want to be aligned with Lucifer. Now, let me go ahead and continue reading this. Masonic lodges are established over the world to help us achieve our independence. Those pigs, the non-Jewish Masons, will never understand the final objectives of Masonry. Now, what's he talking about, the non-Jewish members? Well, the ones who do not know about the Kabbalah. This is all Jewish magic. This is all Kabbalic, Hebrew, Jewish stuff, Kabbalic magic. This is the ones, if the ones who in Freemasonry don't understand it, they consider them pigs, they're useful idiots. But the ones who understand this, they know they're going to be with Lucifer. Everybody else, they're useful idiots, they can die. It don't matter to them. Now, that said, knowing the religion of that side, now how are they going to, once again, how are they going to get people to think God turned their back on them? These Freemasons are provocateurs, and they're agents of change, and, change for the bad, not good. And they go in and they use Christianity. And right here, if you read, there are several Baptists in the Baptist National Convention who are members of Freemasonry. There's a ton of preachers that y'all look up to who are Freemasons. Now, it's like, well, I don't see no pictures of them, Rose. Well, it's a secret society. Some of them want to be secret, but they have to show you. That's why if you look with Trump with that eagle, or Trump holding a Masonic apron, or in all those pictures, all that stuff, he's a Freemason. It don't have to be out there with neon lights for you to see it. Also, some of them are not, they don't call themselves Freemasons, so they use like this trickery of language. Oh, I'm not a Freemason, I'm actually a member of Skull and Crossbones, like Billy Graham. He was big in with the Bush family. So with the Billy Graham stuff, you can say, well, you wasn't a Freemason, and they can put that on the internet without technically fibbing. But if you look at Billy Graham, speaking of him, look at this little handshake here he's doing. Now, with Truman, he's a master president of his lodge. But look at this little weird handshake he's doing. There are all sorts of little pictures of Billy Graham doing all sorts of little handshakes. He is a Mason member. Now, which branch he's in, that's up for debate. But he's definitely within this cult. Now, why do I mention these preachers? Well, now I have to mention this Scofield Reference Bible. If you look at this Scofield Reference Bible, it came out, first appeared in 1909 and revised in 1917, 1 year before the Balfour Declaration. Now, a lot of your Baptists and doctrines that go along the Baptist line, they use this Scofield Study Bible, and they think it is written in stone. But when you read it, there's all sorts of heresy all over it. It's all about, and we have to bless Israel. Those who bless Israel will be blessed, and da-da-da-da. It's got that language all over it. Why would it have that language all over it in 1909 and 1917 when Israel didn't even exist? Why would you even have that? That makes no sense. You have to bless Israel. Well, I can't do that. There is no Israel. Israel didn't come about until 1949. That's because this is all part of the plan. This is all part of it. Also, if you look, you had Oxford University Press was who first published the Scofield Study Bible. That's a Jewish publishing company. That's a Little Hat Publishing Company. Little Hat as in Zionist, Little Hat Kabbalah Publishing Company. He wanted that stuff out, so you have to bless Israel. You have to bless Israel so you can have the Kabbalah stuff happening. Bless it, get all these Christians on board with it. Now, I'm not the only one that's saying this. This is absolute gospel fact, pun intended. If you look here, here's an article that came out in September of 2015, Washington Report of Middle East, the Scofield Bible, the book that made Zionists of America's evangelical Christians. They're saying all the American Christians are Zionists now through the Scofield Study Bible, through its teachings. Like I said, bless Israel. You have to bless Israel. And, the land belongs to Israel. Why would you say that if Israel wasn't even a country? It's because it was using and tricking people to become Zionists. Now, this came out, I told you Tucker Carlson's a Freemason. I do believe that John Rich is involved in all this as well. Anybody's hanging around with Trump and Tucker and all this, they're up there in this organization. But anyway, like I said before, they have to tell you what they're doing. And then if you don't do anything about it, they consider it consent. But let's listen to what John Rich and Tucker Carlson talk about with the Scofield Bible.
Is the Scofield Bible, its theology is deceptive.
A very wealthy, very charismatic preacher named John Darby came with this doctrine that's now referred to as the secret rapture or the pre-tribulation rapture. And guess who he was connected to, by the way? The Rothschilds.
Interesting.
Have you ever heard of a Scofield Bible?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So C.I. Scofield was basically a student of John Darby, and he adopted that part of the doctrine, and he incorporated that into the Bible. It was the first Bible ever made that had study notes with it. It became so popular, every Christian was reading it, every minister was reading it, including me, including my own father. For a long time, that's what we believed too. But when you start actually going back and reading line by line by line what is said that will be leading up to Jesus coming back, which is when the rapture happens, it's the inverse of what John Darby put down. My sense was the Scofield stuff, which has had massive implications for our foreign policy, for example, and in our domestic politics, was probably a lie. I do know that translation or that commentary on the Bible has had massive effects on our politics that have been very, very negative and resulted in the deaths of a lot of people.
Now, they put this out, and they let you see it. Now, I've been talking about the Scofield Study Bible being absolutely horrible, and you need to stay away from it for years. But they have to let it out now. Now, what does this Scofield Study Bible teach? Like John Rich said, it talks about a pre-tribulation rapture. And I'm going to tell you, there is no rapture. There's only resurrection. And the stuff in the Bible, in Revelation, has already happened up to Revelation 20. It's already happened. Israel was destroyed by God in 70 A.D. There is no replacement theology. That's heresy. There is continuation theology, where Christianity continues on from that point, from out of Judaism, out of the old law. Then you got Christianity, talking about Esau and Jacob, hating the one and loving the other, and the eldest will serve the younger. That's what all that's talking about. That's what all Paul is talking about. But this Scofield Study Bible comes out, and even John and Tucker say, yeah, it talks about this pre-trib rapture, where we're all going to be sucked out of here, and we're not going to have any pain or hurt or anything like that. But here's where they get you. That's not going to happen. There is not going to be any sucking out of here. Everybody's going to be here in the horribleness of all this that Albert Pike talked about. And because you're going to be here in this horribleness, you're going to think that God turned his back on you. Now, I'm not the only one saying this. There was a whistleblower came out. This is on the Jimmy Dore show, and I forget this woman's name. She's an atheist. This woman who's talking is an atheist. I'm going to read what's on here. I don't want another copyright copyright strike. Excuse me, I know with the last one that's only a minute, this is going to be longer, so I'll just read it. But anyway, this atheist woman said that there was a whistleblower came out and exposed how Israel brainwashes American Christians. So let me go ahead and read it. She states Sun Tzu wrote, all warfare is based on deception. You've heard many stories about Israeli government deceiving and manipulating U.S. officials, steering our country towards and funding and even fighting their wars. Let me tell you one more. Israel exploits the religious beliefs of American Christians, fostering a certain flavor of fanaticism to empower a doomsday cult in a twisted effort to serve the interest of this increasingly genocidal apartheid state. Let's see the next one here. I know this because I was the central useful idiot in the PSYOP. As the strategic outreach director of the Consulate General of Israel to the Southwest United States, I spent the last 8.5 years betraying my country on behalf of the Israeli government, using theology and geopolitical tool, and simultaneously lost my faith in God. Premillennial dispensationalism, that's where there's a pre-trib rapture, is the Christian end-time belief that all true believers will be raptured way to heaven, ushering in a 7-year tribulation period under the reign of the Antichrist, where those left behind will endure unspeakable suffering before the day of judgment and eternity trapped in hell. Since Israel plays a central role in this apocalyptic fantasy, adherents of this view are required to foster unconditional support for the contemporary Israel government, which they view as the manifestation of biblical Israel. On the next screen. The adherents are in very real sense rooting for Armageddon. Beliefs can be very powerful, and it doesn't take a genius to grasp how this belief is a national security vulnerability of biblical proportions. One that has captured the mind of Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, and countless others in our government. The evidence for this capture is overwhelming and undeniable. Ambassador Huckabee has placed a great deal of his political career in the service of his belief system and has made no secret of his view. He has said, I think Israel has title deed to Judea and Samaria. There is no such thing as an occupation. Notice the use of the term Judea and Samaria rather than West Bank. Huckabee has suggested that you can't understand the geopolitical situation of the Middle East without understanding the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Recently, President Donald Trump tweeted a personal tweet from Huckabee, a text that Pastor Franklin Graham retweeted suggesting that God spared Donald Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania because he has a special purpose for the president as some sort of American savior figure. It would seem this cult of personality surrounding Trump has become a full-fledged cult. I personally met Ambassador Huckabee at the very first Impression of Pro-Israel event he spoke at, which I attended for networking purposes as a function of my former job. This event was organized by Michael Evans, a former Masonic Jew turned evangelical Christian. There's a team swapper. Evans is a longtime personal friend of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and leads both the Jerusalem Prayer Team and the Friends of Zionism Museum in Israel. Before he was kicked off Facebook, the Jerusalem Prayer Team had 77 million followers. He is one of the least recognized and most influential individuals in the Christian Zionist movement. Ambassador Huckabee has referenced Genesis 12:3 in his official remarks, stating, "I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse." I want to be on the blessing side, not the curse side. This is the same verse Senator Cruz, attempting to cite a book that is allegedly fundamental to his vision of the world, couldn't quite remember when he was being dog-walked in an interview with Tucker Carlson. This is the filter American foreign policy that's being distorted through. Over the course of my services to the Israel government, I utilized the verse countless times, incorporating in all sorts of strategic communications and remarks that the Consul General would deliver or I would deliver on behalf of the consulate at dozens of events. These events in Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, ranged from what were essentially pep rallies for Israel at megachurches and speaking at Sunday service to Holocaust remembrance events to appearances on Christian television networks like Daystar and Victory Channel to pastors' luncheons where leaders representing dozens of national congressionals would be in attendance to hear briefing from Israeli diplomats. Among the leaders was former Israel ambassador to the United States, current Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Demmer, who would explain why congressional leaders would support Israel and get their flock to support Israel by voting in elected officials who will unquestionably do the bidding of Israel government. I even planned a delegation of pastors to visit Israel and specifically identified prominent leaders who had not visited the country before to go on government-approved holy propaganda tours. One of the pastors sits on the board of a large Christian organization, Promise Keepers, and leads Holston's Mayor Minister Advisory Board. Several occupy prominent positions in Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in America, whose leadership is recently embroiled in the systemized cover-up of sexual abuse. Over my time at the consulate, we would directly engage with no fewer than 4 leaders who were accused of sexually abusing women and minors. 2 of the cases we were aware of not reaching out with this number would actually be higher, and I have not lied to the Consul General by saying that I reached out to some people they say they wanted me to, and I never did. The U.S. Pastor Council and the consulate support of the far-right Holy Land Redemption Fund, redeeming land, in the West Bank might be the most troubling thing we were involved in. This group, led by Mustafa Isaac, required the land in the West Bank under dubious circumstances to move more Israel settlers in and change the facts on the ground. We met with Isaac in the consulate, helped to coordinate meetings between him and prominent pastors, and even did an online event with the group. One pastor I helped to connect to this financial settler project in the West Bank was elected to the city council of Houston. Another was Kenneth Copeland. You might remember him as the pastor unsuccessfully beseeched God to give him the power to literally blow away COVID. Copeland is worth an estimated $300 million at least, making him likely the richest pastor in the world. Mustafa Isaac told me that Kenneth Copeland has been a great donor to the Holy Land Redemption Fund since we introduced him. Now, Copeland is he's a Mason, big time. And then it shows Copeland there, talking about him. I think that's it on that. Oh, no, here we go. Another was Kenneth Copeland. Okay, we already said that one. Yeah. While there are many Israeli partners of these Christian Zionists who are fanatic themselves, consider Defense Minister Israel Katz's recent post about bringing about a plague of the firstborn, many Israeli partners engage in this a completely cynical manner. Larry Hutch, pastor of New Beginnings Church in DFW, is a rock star in the Christian Zionist movement. He once remarked, if we lose Jerusalem, what I believe with all my heart, if we lose Jerusalem, we will delay the coming of the Messiah. That's why the enemy of the spiritual world, Satan, wants to get rid of Jerusalem. Because whether you think he's coming for or the first time or the second time, what everybody knows is he's coming for Jerusalem. Early on in my time in the consulate, I was traveling with Consul Daniel Angravov, I know I butchered that, to one of these aforementioned prep rallies for Israel at the New Beginnings Church that was organized in partnership with Israel of Allies Foundation, a pro-Israel DC-based lobbying outfit. Consul Aganov, Pastor Hutch, and Senator Cruz were all scheduled to speak. When riding in the car on the way to church, I explained the premillennial dispensationalist theory that underpins much evangelical support for Israel to Consul Aganov. Let's find the next one. He responded, these people give me the fucking creeps. Sorry about that. I'm just reading verbatim. What happens when they go back to their thinking their God doesn't like us again? This was about an hour before he would take the stage and say how grateful he was for Christian support while exclaiming Israel praise for peace, taken from the remarks I quote. The last I heard from Daniel Aganov is he's still an Israeli diplomat. The largest of these pep rallies for Israel is the annual Night to Honor Israel, hosted by the founder of Christians United for Israel. That's Pastor John Hagee of Cornerstone Church in San Antonio. The Council General would speak at this event every year, usually delivering remarks I wrote. Here's an example. I can already hear the false charges from the anti-Semitism coming my way. Consider Muhammad Ibrahim. He's an American 16-year-old who has spent over 6 months in an Israeli dungeon on the West Bank, unable to speak to his family because he allegedly threw rocks in an empty street. He's been reported he's lost 25 pounds and has developed scabies. That's a U.S. citizen, by the way. His cousin was beaten to death by Israeli settlers. They were supposed to spend the summer working in an ice cream shop in Florida. But just a few weeks ago, Tom Alexander, I know I butchered it, an Israeli government official was rounded up in a sting operation for soliciting sex from a minor. He was released on bail and flew back to Israel. The juxtaposition on display is jaw-dropping, as is shameful. Israel officials doing government work come here looking to rape American children in some disgusting act of sex tourism and are released. Meanwhile, American children rot in Israeli prisons with no meaningful due process. This goes on indifference from your government as they funnel more and more of your money to God's chosen government. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you are a bigot for being bothered by this state of affairs, and don't let anyone ever tell you that this government speaks for all American Jews, or even Israel Jews for that matter. I'm not saying that you need to become an atheist like me, though I would encourage it. I'm saying that if an entity can hijack your faith, they can use it to hijack your government. You would be wise to be on guard. This is a whistleblower that came out of Israel. And right here, just go to Jimmy Dore Show. Right here's the link to it right here on top. But the whole point was that premillennial dispensationalism. You remember me reading that? You said, yeah, these people scare me. What happens when their faith falls apart? What happens when there's... But folks, that's what they count on. That's what they're looking for. When the people lose their faith in God. And they're already using this. They're using it right now. They're testing it. They've already got this Jesus in the clouds stuff. And they got people believing, look, here's Lord Jesus in the clouds. Here's Jesus in the clouds. Here's a Jesus in the clouds. Here's a Jesus in the clouds. You got all these people talking about there's Jesus in the clouds. But like I said, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to y'all's faith When you think you're going to be whisked out here in a premillennial dispensational belief system that, ooh, I'm going to get out here and I'm going to go up in the clouds, and it doesn't happen, then everything falls apart. And you're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to turn your back on God because you think, you have been taught, you have been ingrained, you have been brainwashed to think that God was coming for you right at that second. And when he doesn't, you're going to be tempted to turn your back on God. But I'm going to tell you right now, God never turned his back on you. You have been lied to so hard, it's unbelievable to look at. And y'all need to come out of this. I'm telling you, you need to read these Mason letters, Herschel, Pike, all of them. You need to read all of it. The UN, all of it. And you will see the same things. I'm not telling you anything that I'm making up or I'm trying to far reach and to make, grab a handful of spaghetti and throw it at a wall and see what sticks. I'm not. I mean, it's right there. They have to tell you. It's right there in the open. But you need to open your eyes in order to see it. You need to quit and get out of this horseshit state you're in by thinking, oh, God would do Christianese and God would do this and my belief, Look, if you're being lied to, you're being lied to, and you need to come out of it. These Freemasons are not messing around. Anyway, I want to point that out, and as always, please read your Bible and have that fantastic day.